guess the real question might be, in your proposal with the text amendment, you've heard the public comments tonight, and you've heard them over the last couple of years. What assurances, what public assurances are there by establishing a text amendment? In other words, what does this put in, for the public in general, what does this put into play that they can be rest assured that, oh, this is going to solve the problem? You know, we have some type of input. The process might be a better guarantee that this will not happen again to the degree that it has happened today.
Guarantees are really...
Because I think that's what the idea of the solution is,
Sure, most
is to
definitely.
solve the problem. As I think may have been Ernie suggested, this takes it out of the realm of the council entirely, or I mean, it's not in the realm of the council anyway, but this assures that it does not fall within the council's realm. So are there other greater assurances that we need to establish to make sure that we have better guarantees and better assurances for the public as a whole, if this were to be proposed in 6 months from now?
So the zoning side of that?
The recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to be a use specifically identified being allowed by special exception opens any future tank request to go through the public hearing process, public notification, posting of the property, notice of the meeting. Board of Appeals has a chairman that's been serving this county since the 1980s. No rubber stamping or carte blanche approvals in my 20-plus years of staffing that board. It's a strict review process. As to what the deliberations were of the commission members, what I gleaned from their discussions amongst the membership, which includes Mr. Holloway, is that the tank as to being located within the industrial districts was not consistent with the definition of an industrial use that's in our county's zoning code. It's not consistent with the intent of what the I-2 district is to include. That also is stated in our county zoning code. As to specifics, for other reasons, again, I'm not necessarily privy to all those discussions. There were public hearings conducted by the Planning Commission. Mr. Holloway participated in at least some of those. And at the end of that process, this is the recommendation of the Planning Commission.
So getting back to the text amendment and the process, so it's a public hearing, 300 people, and there will be 300 people. 300 people come in and say, well, we don't want it. We absolutely don't want it. What kind of leeway is there? Are they going to come back and say, hey, it's an agricultural amendment? I think that's the term. Is that it? They're going to say it's not composting. They're going to say it's an agricultural amendment. They may follow the exact same process that has already been followed over these last couple of years. If there are 300 people that come in and say, we don't want it, is there the leeway and the tendency for that to be understood and for them to make a decision favorable to that response? Or are they going to fall back on the law?
Excuse me, Mr. Cannon, when you say they, who are you speaking of, sir?
Opponents.
The proponents or you?
Opponents.
Opponents.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the Board of Appeals.
Board of Appeals. Okay, I thought so. That's why I wanted to make sure that's who you were speaking about. So basically, you know, Clark, again, he's had over 25 plus years of experience. There have been nights when we've had cases that have come up that you know, you may have several that show up who's not happy with a particular project or whatever being actually proposed. There have been times that, you know, the board has actually considered what they had to say. But I think what is important here is that if there's certain restrictions that you want to see added, you've gotten a guide or you've gotten recommendations or that you have recommendations that you could either add to or take away. And that's once you've scheduled the public hearing, as what you've already have heard from some of those, what some of those actual concerns are, those are things that you can take into make it a part of the I don't want to speak to Paul because he can speak to that. So I want to speak as a lawyer.
As you were hearing tonight, there are other restrictions that can be put on a special exception. And if the council wishes to expand that list of restrictions, you can do it.
So, I mean, I guess, I'm sorry, Joe.
Go ahead.
We have the chair of the Wicomico Farm Bureau here saying that this is an industrial product. This needs to be in the industrial zone. It's not agriculture. So we're going back to this being in the agricultural. Like, I feel like we're in such far ends of the spectrum here. How do we ever get to the middle?
I think that one thing that one has to concern is that as the planning department, as has been stated, we worked with the commission. The commission came up with these recommendations. This is what they felt as a commission was important to this legislation. If there's other things that the council wanted to add or to take away, you guys can do that. But this is what's being actually presented based upon the existing zoning code, what is there. And again, if there's certain types of restrictions, say for instance, I think it was on here, the commission said 300 feet. You can make it to 600. If there's other things you want to add, but this is what the commission, along with supportive staff, in regards to helping them, felt were the best recommendations at that particular time.
Yes, Judge.
So with what is put before us and then with our current zoning, I guess theoretically I'm aware that there's a tank that is on Portermill Road. Say that same property, could there be a second one, a twin tank put there on that facility under the current proposed rules and regulation?
Clark.
I believe there's a moratorium in place.
Pardon me, day one
Day one, after the
moratorium is
moratorium,
done. Could they theoretically put a twin tank, 3 million or whatever it was, how many gallons?
Yes.
So we didn't really address anything then. If the public has basically said, we need to then, this is an issue, and they've mentioned obviously smells being an issue, the road traffic, you can go down the list of issues. Then any regulation, or the current proposed regulations aren't really addressing what they said they want to address. So it said, there are a number of things that they did mention tonight that we should consider, and that means, not being over the paleo channel overlay or the, or the critical area. There's we didn't get into, the current regulations don't go into the size of the tank, which, okay. The setbacks could also continue to be addressed. I don't know how we would address the issue of smell. We've got folks that have been reaching out to us nonstop for 3 years, but even this last couple of weeks, when it got pretty hot, you had folks reaching out, and we said, they live more than a mile away, and are complaining. I don't know how you address that with a 300 or 400 foot setback. As I've said before, I do think open tanks are not the future from what I see in my daily work. Obviously, more the closed tank, closed systems are the way to go. But that's a different situation. So I guess the question, I guess, in my mind is still process, or do we, I looked to Ms. Hurley and I looked to other, are we supposed to then take recommendations, things that we've heard folks say today, and then give them to the Mr. Wilbur, to you or others, to then try to figure out how to further narrow? Because I'd love to finally bring all this together and to come up with something. I feel like we're close. But so what is process-wise? What do we do?
So I think council needs to decide whether or not they want to have a separate public hearing from the legislative process. So that would be a step one. And then we can have Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Wilbur work together based on the feedback that you have received from the citizens, and put something in written form, ready for introduction.
Mr. President, I would love to, personally, I'll say this, go on record, I would love to see us, the council, hold our own public hearing on the issue, just as a take information in, so that we could then give substantial, specific request regulations to then go on to legal to then to take that next step.
Hey, Bill, what I'm saying, Joe, I appreciate what you're saying. Just hang on one second, Joe.
Let Ernie go.
I think planning and zoning can approve the tank. That correct? Can approve tanks. Am I correct?
Under the current,
Any kind of tank. That's what you guys do. You guys approve the tank, right?
by zoning, tanks generally are not considered a use.
Okay.
It's an appurtenance.
It's an appurtenance.
Okay.
Attached to another yet to be identified.
And I think the problem is what's in the tank. It's not that the tank was approved by planning and zoning. I think the problem is the definition of what's in that tank. Is it a soil amendment or is it industrial use?
According to the state, it is a soil amendment.
Yes, and I think that might be the problem that we're having. It's because the state is saying one thing and the public and some of the council is saying this is not a soil amendment because it's being produced in an industry.
The issue since day one has been the product.
That's it.
Not the
tank.
storage tank
It's
itself.
the product.
A product which is approved by the state chemist to be included with an approved nutrient management plan.
Which I have no
It's-
problem with it. But it seems like the problem is that people are now saying, well, they've been saying it from the start. It's not a soil amendment. It's an industrial product. It's not coming from the chicken plants. If it was coming from the chicken plants to the soil, fine. But when it's going from the chicken plant to Valley Proteins and whatever they're doing to it, to me, it's industrial waste now.
That sounds like an issue to be addressed with the Maryland Department of the
the problem.
Environment, the
That's
Maryland
what I-
Department
That's
of
what we've been
They
Agriculture.
need to be in on
Not
this right here.
Wicomico County Planning and
That's right. It's not you guys, because all your guys did was approve the tank. It's what's in the tank that's the problem, and who approved that.
Yep.
Can I ask a question just for information?
Okay.
When you had the authority levels up there,
Yes, sir.
you said that the state does safety, use, application, and inspection, but the county does storage. Can the county say you can use it here under the Maryland state laws, regulations, but you can't store it here? So you could bring it in from Valley Protein for your own farm, but you couldn't keep it here. I wish I knew the answer, but I just
You know what
thought
he's
of it.
saying? He's saying the trucks come straight from the plant, straight to the farm, instead of bringing it from the plant and putting it in a storage tank in Wicomico.
You just heard there's only 2 or 3 farmers using it now.
Yep, it's only 2 that does it.
Now, it sounds like what you're suggesting is that it be banned entirely.
The storage
Storage
tank,
tank.
not
He's
the
talking about
use.
storage. He's not
They could
saying
still
use,
use
he's
it.
saying storage.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're talking about banning the tanks, period.
The storage, yeah.
Yeah, the tanks.
I'm not sure you can do it, but it seems like if that's really the appropriate authority. I mean, I haven't looked it up. I didn't think of it till I saw
We
that.
have that authority in zoning regulations.
They don't.
I'm not aware of a chemist or a biologist on staff with planning and zoning. I've not, with the exception of the tank located on Porter Mill Road, I've not looked into a single storage tank across Wicomico County.
In other words, you're saying that the council would still have to abide by state law if we were to specifically target banning DAF tanks? Because, sure, we could say you can't have storage tanks in Wicomico County, but that's not practical.
Well, no,
So-
I actually meant storage of DAF.
I understand, but that's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry.
Saying, zoning, we're limited to tanks or no tanks. We can't, I'm guessing that you're trying to tell us because of the state of Maryland, we can't isolate it to saying we don't want DAF tanks here. Because our zoning issues are in regard to tanks, period, not the substance that goes in.
We don't, right.
I'm not so sure. Yeah, I think we can legislate what. I think we could legislate that if we. I mean, if the desire was there. You know, if you want to get that specific.
That's what I'm asking. Is that something that the council, as a local jurisdiction, has the authority
You have authority on that, Paul?
to do?
They don't know, you have to ask.
Mr. Wilbur,
Yeah,
Mike.
as we have this discussion, you know, the state is classifying as a soil amendment, you know, agriculture. And then would we be getting, it's a research thing, but would we be getting into the thing of, well, if you're going to start banning that, then what else are you going to ban? Or are you even permitted to ban an agricultural soil amendment?
And that always comes down to if you stop something here, then how is that going to, you know, basically impact something else? So if it starts here, then what is?
DAF is a process
Well, can you,
for creating this product. DAF is not a specific item. So I'm not sure what council would consider banning.
how did
Storage of
Dorchester-
any soil amendment, the piling of chicken litter on fields. It's an approved soil amendment. DAF is a process to produce this material. It is not a specific product in and of itself.
I understood. Now, how did Dorchester manage to push it down the road?
I'm not sure about that, and I don't try to speak to things that there's many discussions on that. Some say that they completely, you know, so I'm not going to speak to that per se, but there's more side to that story.
And I should already know that in the time we've had to do this, and I don't know if someone in the industries can help us with this, but we need that, as long as this has been on the table, we should know that.
Well,
What has Dorchester done that Wicomico County hasn't done?
Well, if I remember right, they just simply classified it as an industrial use and said it wasn't permitted. I think that's what
That they
they
couldn't
said.
store it.
The request for the storage tank in Dorchester County was withdrawn by the applicant. There was no action by
There was no
Dorchester
action,
County.
right.
Well, right, my question is, what did the county do as a body to begin that, to create such a deterrent so that it was withdrawn? That's what I would be concerned about. What was it that they were proposing that?
I don't believe that's for us to answer.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Could we circle back to something?
Let me get Joe, because Joe
Oh, I
has been
thought-
waiting for
I
like
thought
10
you-
minutes.
Go
Good, Joe.
I'm here.
You have the floor, man.
Okay. We got, you know, we actually got really three big issues here. For one thing, the tank that's there is not going to go away. We can't come along and pass a law now to make that tank go away. So that's the first issue. The second thing is Mrs. Kenny has submitted about 3 pages here of suggestions that I think that we probably should take home with us and look over, because there is some workable things in there that I think would make this whole process seem better, okay? The last thing, and the thing that really concerns me the most, is if we go passing laws that ban something, as you all brought up, okay, a tank, you know, a product, is somebody going to twist that? Is Gino not going to be able to put something on his property? Is Dave not going to be able to sell something out of his store? You know, will the next thing be if Gino's cutting wheat and somebody rides down the road and the dust comes in their car, you know, and causes their asthma to flare up, you know? So we're walking a real fine line. We know the problem with the tank. We know the problem that folks have had with the tank, but we need to find a solution for anything that comes along after. I don't know that there's anything, according to what Paul says, right, Paul? There's nothing we can do about the tank that's there, correct? I mean, it's pretty much been decided by our law department. I don't know whether if they decided to go to court again and do whatever they had to do. You know, that's for legal minds to figure out. But that's the two things. This list Ms. Kenny gave, I think there's some excellent suggestions in there that we should review. I also have this fear of what we pass that will have an ill effect on some other form of agriculture in Wicomico County. and I know this is probably seems to be the most invasive thing that we've come up with, but, you know, I've heard too many times, and I heard somebody say, well, these folks were here for the DAF tank. That's true. That's very true. But Foreman was here before a lot of folks moved into the neighborhood, and folks get upset about the combine that's driving too slow down the road, or the dust, or the chicken manure. So we need to be cautious here.
I understand that. Jeff, Bill?
Yeah, a couple things. I'm going to circle back, and actually, the right to farm would protect a lot of those issues you just kind of brought up there.
Yeah, but they can, Bill, they can challenge that too, and it's been challenged.
Sure,
you know,
that will always happen. But I want to try to bring a little, I don't want to say closure to this, but a little summation to this. I think where we stand is, and I agree with you 100%. I think we need to address the restrictions. You know, I think that's very short. What's been proposed by the Planning Commission doesn't address near enough the restrictions. You know, getting back to the example of what Ms. Kenny proposed to us, you know, a lot of those things are somewhat basic things that should be addressed with this. You know, everything from you know, either classifying the road or the size of the site, or the not limiting, you know, to one tank, the, you know, site inspections, security, you know, fencing. You know, we can add all those things if we wish. You know, I think that's something we need to figure out. Do we want to, how much more do we want to add to that? I think we add those, which is, I think, a choice we got to make. Do we want this? This is, I think, a choice for this council. Do we want it in the I-2, or are we going to allow this in A1 as they propose via special exception? I think that's just something we got to, you know, the council needs to decide that. But
let me
finish. But whether it's in the I-2 or whether it's in the A1 with special exception, those same the restrictions will be similar. You know, they might vary a little bit. For the most part, they're still similar. So I think, you know, that needs to be, you know, and before we get to Josh's suggestion of, quote, a public hearing, you know, I think we need to have a legislation that's crafted. We need to put in what restrictions we want, but then we got to decide, we going to propose this in the I-2, or are we going to propose this in A1 with special exception?
There's one question, if I missed it tonight, maybe you can answer. We've got the industrial zone. Okay. How much of that is actually in the county and not in the city? Because a lot of that industrial zone is in the city. And so the city could actually say, if, to Bill's suggestion, we move this to the city, or to the I-1, is there even hardly any industrial area that's outside the city? Because the city could come along and say, hey, we're not going to allow it in the city, correct?
The industrial zoning districts shown on the zoning map, that is county zoning. What's in gray on the map are the
Right,
incorporated
understand that. It's
towns.
a county, but it's also part of that's in the city, right?
No, none of
None of
the
this.
heavy industrial is purple, and that's all county zoning. There's no,
Okay.
only those areas in the gray are the incorporated towns,
This area.
Okay.
Sharptown,
All right. Okay, that answers that
Hebron,
question.
Mardella.
You were telling us, long and short of it is, it's can't be put in the industrial zone because it's too close to congested areas. Is that right?
I believe that was one of the determinations of the
They made
planning
that
commission.
determination, and yes.
So if we're going to put it in the A1, then you're also saying that we could take this entire list that Ms. Kenny has presented to the council, and we could turn this into the entire list of special exceptions that we would like to see established. Is that correct? Don't know. Is that right or not? I'm not, you know, I'm
And
just asking.
we're in the process, we are here tonight at your request, I believe, forwarding the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. To borrow a phrase, the ball is in council's court.
I'm not
at
sure
this
it
point in
goes
time.
far
So
enough, and that's why I was asking whether.
that-
or not
And
we wanted to
that would
implement
be
this. Do we have
under
that
the
authority?
authority of the
Yes.
council to
Yes.
modify
Answer the
what has
question.
been submitted, reject out of hand.
Yes.
It's now in the council's hands to craft what they see
Concerns-
appropriate.
Concerns me really a lot is traffic. really am concerned about that, but we don't want to compromise the poultry industry. But I'm getting the impression that the number of trucks that are going in and out of these places is a much greater volume than what you might, I think it was said tonight, is a much greater volume than what you're seeing with the poultry industry. How are we going to regulate that? How are we going to say three trucks in an hour? And I'm not being cynical. How are we?
That's very true.
How are we going to be able to do that?
The other thing, I think it was our last zoning meeting, we approved a residential area in the industrial zone, and at the suggestion of the city. I mean, this was a city. So, the city's putting residential areas in I-1. So that creates a conflict when you get down to it. So,
I guess try to bring some folks to this. And Josh, I recognize your request. Again, I'll repeat it again. It appears to me that putting it in an industrial zone isn't going to work just because of the dense population. We have to follow your lead because you're the staff.
The Planning Commission made recommendations, and that's what it is.
Well, Bill has a concern. He says there's not a dense population by the landfill. So do we create an I-3 and say, okay, this is an area where there's not a dense population. Maybe that's where we can put the DAF tank.
I don't know about creating an I-3.
Hypothetical.
Okay, hypothetical. But I think, as Mr. Meadows said, you as the council have the opportunity to add as many restrictions as you choose. This is the framework that the Planning Commission started and what they felt based upon the information they had. But if you want to add, you have more, that's what you can do. It's just what you decide. I don't know if it's going to be that list of 100 or whatever it is, but you have that right to do that.
Which would keep it within the realm of a text amendment legislation.
It's going to be a text amendment anyway, am I correct?
Right.
Paul, it's going to be that anyway. It's
Well,
going to be that anyway.
So we're talking text amendment more so than we are changing the zoning.
This is a text amendment.
Right. Yes.
I'm just going to say last piece on this. Just so we're stating the obvious, Wicomico County has a very strong growing population, and many, many years ago, it decided that residential homes were more important than agriculture. I used to ride down the Athol Autobahn at 16, 17, 18 years old, 90 miles an hour, because Athol Road, you could look as far as you could see, and you couldn't see anything. It was just fields and ag. Now there's a good, 150 homes up inside there. So, stating the obvious, it's going to be very hard to find a place, even in the agricultural, in the A1 district, where, that something like this could be accepted. And I would love for the county to be able to say, no, obviously agriculture and rural conservation is much more important, which we still do to some degree, but we're going to run into that issue just because our county is a place where folks want to live. And so I think either way we go about this, anyway, it's going to be a very narrow couple spots where something like this could occur. And maybe it is slightly in an agricultural zone in a very, very limited capacity. And maybe it's also in in the I-2 in a very limited capacity. But just so it said, we are a growing county. This is going to be an issue. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Gannon, are we going to, is legal going to pursue the question on whether or not we can ban the storage of the product?
Well, Paul could certainly
We can take a look at that.
Okay.
Okay.
So with what you have put in place is buffers and, the 200, 300, 400 feet. What if we made it much larger than that?
You have that.
We have that option.
You have that option, sir.
We could create a huge buffer if we really wanted to. Is there any thought, and I mentioned before, is there any thought of looking, when you look at the agricultural district, is there any idea of recognizing areas where the population is so minuscule that this would be a better location for storage and we could isolate it to different locations that we know are isolated areas.
Those are all questions that are part and parcel of a special exception hearing.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Those-
But we
they-
can't
they
give you
cons-
that
They
answer.
consider these standards that are proposed by the Planning Commission can be, I think it would be rare that they could be identified as standards in the legislation, but the Board of Appeals could increase those depending on a specific property. They're not bound by that being a carte blanche standard. They would not be allowed to go below that standard, right, Paul? But they could certainly have a higher standard or a greater setback or.
Bill's talked before about changing different, having more than just, having multiple ag districts. Could there be an ag district that was created with a recommendation through planning and zoning that would say this is an area that would suffice and be acceptable?
There's a big job for, now, Bob always said that, I mean, we have, industrial, we got I-1, I-2, we look at residential, we got, R20, R30, village, I mean, we got, 4 or 5 different classifications, commercial, we got 4 or 5 different classifications, but then we get to ag, we got A1. And most counties have different.
Well, that's not entirely accurate. Agricultural activities are allowed in all the residential districts. Now, there are different levels and intensities of agricultural activities that can occur in those, depending on whether it's R20, R8, that sort of thing. So we do have multiple districts that allow agricultural uses.
We have one ag zoning, we have A1. We don't have, we don't have an A1, A2, A3.
We do have an A2,
levels.
but
Yeah.
We'd have to go through comprehensive rezoning if we went through that,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
like
that's a
some
big
sort of
part.
larger process.
We're not going to create that note or solve that tonight. I think we got 2 steps in this. We got one, step 1 is the council needs to decide I2 or A1 with special exception.
Right.
I don't think we can do it until we decide that. Once we decide that, then I think step 2 is we got to look at the restrictions. What do we want to add to that list in terms of, the further restrictions we can do?
Exactly.
and the council's not limited to an either or. It could be an and. What's recommended by the Planning Commission is A1, but it would be,
Paul or Lori, whichever one, Clark, whichever one. We have the Right to Farm Act.
86, yes, sir.
Okay, due to the fact that this is designated by the state as a soil amendment, was this considered when it was brought to the county to be approved that this was a farming type operation and this would fall under the Right to Farm Act?
speak to specifics now about the formula?
Allowed to speak to specifics?
Been settled?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The request for a tank was considered to be, fall under what is defined as agriculture or agricultural as a storage facility for an approved agricultural product. No different than if someone had come and asked, what do I need to do to build a grain silo?
So it would fall under the Right to Farm, the way it's
That's
written right
correct.
now? Okay.
Well, in light of what Bill has said, I mean, I feel like I'm repeating myself. The recommendation, Bill, is, from what we're getting from planning and zoning, is that industrial is not going to work. So it only leaves us with the idea of the special exceptions that we create
You're dead wrong
in an
there.
A1.
No, you're dead wrong.
I thought you said we only had
Just
two
because
choices.
that's a recommendation.
It's recommendation,
We
that is
make
correct.
the decision, we're the county council.
I
It
understand
is a
that, but-
recommendation. It is
Hey, look, the zoning board wrestled with this.
Right,
Yeah.
twice
yeah,
back
right,
here.
right. Just because
so it is a
doesn't mean we do
recommendation.
it.
He is actually correct about that. It is a recommendation.
I get it, but your recommendation is industrial's not going to work. So what are you going to make your decision based on?
According to the,
I think it's going to have to be an and. I think we're going to have to look
I
at
think that's
both
what
of them.
Clark was saying.
Yeah, and it would have to be just very restrictive and it may not leave us with many options, but we could still at the end of the day have options. As Mr. Holloway mentioned, we don't want to be a county that says no, period, to anything. So I think we just have to find the right way, even if it's hard, even if it's,
Well, as Bill said, it's either A1 or industrial, first decision.
Yeah. Or both.
Who here,
We're not here to do that.
but, no, what I'm saying though, but who here feels comfortable with the recommendation from planning and zoning right now that it is not going to work in an industrial zone?
Recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Understood. Oh, I'm sorry, from the planning commission.
Thank you.
That's what they've recommended. It's not going to work in an industrial. So are we going to still sit here and debate industrial versus ag, or are we going to try to accept that recommendation? If you don't, I don't know where we're going to go back to. We're going to be chasing our tails. Or do we take a hard look at A1?
John, we're the county council. We can do, we're the
That's what I'm
legislative
asking.
body.
What does this council want to do? Do you want to take a
It may-
recommendation from planning
We
commission?
don't have to accept the recommendation. If we want to say I2, it's I2. If we want to say
We're the
A1 with
legislative
special
body.
exception, we say A1 with special exception. We're the legislative body.
Well, that's why I'm asking the legislative body
I
tonight.
would like to hear the response from legal on whether or not we can legislate so the storage cannot be here.
Completely. I mean, totally.
Completely remove the storage of it, not the application, but the storage.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I just want to remind council that we do have the moratorium in place, but that will expire at the end of this year. And so if we're going to move forward with legislation, we're going to need to start that process pretty soon.
Isn't that a solution that an answer we already have over the last 2 years?
I mean, the concern, I'll look at it, but the concern would be, the state is calling this a soil amendment, which is in the agricultural area. So are we going to start banning agricultural, quote, quote, products?
Yeah, but that's not what I had. You could still use it.
Yeah, you still use
You
it?
could
No.
buy it
No,
from
I-
You just
people in
can't store it.
Delaware and put it on your farm.
Yeah.
I mean, I may be totally off base, but it occurred to me that if the state is not regulating the storage and we are, then they can just bring it in.
Is the council
what we'll
ready to
look at.
come to some type of a consensus as to whether or not we would take the recommendation from the commission in regard to not putting it in an industrial area?
I think that's premature to have that consensus, John.
Excuse me?
I think that's premature to have that consensus until we get more information.
Okay, so what would more information be? What does the council need for more information?
Always ask Paul to,
I'm going to look at this idea of,
yeah.
can we ban the storage of this agricultural soil amendment, as the state calls it?
Okay, so, and if you were to find out that we couldn't, what would we decide as far as the industrial?
That's premature to ask that question,
I
John.
just feel like we're kicking a can a mile.
Can we ban the application?
Not the application, the storage.
The state, Maryland Department of Agriculture.
That is strictly up to the state.
Josh, I wanted to hit one, because you had mentioned the public hearings, and I appreciate that. We have had so many public discussions, we know what we know the ins and out of what every single citizen in this county does or doesn't want. A lot of it's what we have in front of us today. So I can appreciate that, and there will be, but I think we still need to come to more decisions.
So there
Yeah,
are
I see-
many other, these are just some other things that that you can actually be able to actually consider. So, again, as the council, you have the ability to be able to make recommendations, add, take away, add, and take away, if you choose. But these are just some things, if you were even to look at it, that you might even want to actually consider as well. So you have that.
That's
framework.
very helpful. Those are the kind of things we have to know, because we're not in this on a regular basis to know how many ways we maybe want to skin a cat. Josh?
Obviously, I could easily come back with, like I've done other things, I could come back with recommendations and send to council and be as public and open about it as possible, things that I think could be a better path forward. I do not think the Planning Commission's recommendations are, I think it has to be both agriculture and industrial. And we just need to highly limit it.
How could it be both?
It can be, it's up to us. It can be both. It can be, we could say, by exception for both with, in either area, under X circumstances, certain setbacks, certain, we can do both, correct? I mean,
You can do both. And I think
I think that'll
No.
give us the most options, is what I'm
It
saying.
has been a long time, but I know one of the things that the community said over and over again in regards to transparency, we have that by doing the special exception, giving the zoning board the opportunity that when something does come, actually, there's a list of things that they can add as well to this whole process, because that's what they do. That's what they do.
But I want to be clear that we should set the floor and feel good about it. Folks just generally these days don't have a lot of trust in government. So to be able to say that, oh yeah, some other folks who are unelected could make a decision that you may not like, that doesn't fly as well these days. No matter if someone's been in there for 25 years and has been in the head.
You can set different restrictions in different zones. You could restrict differently in ag than you do in industrial if you so chose.
Right.
Well, I would suggest then that, first of all, I would certainly want to see larger maps of the industrial zones that we have. If it's a PDF file that we can expand to give us a better understanding of how congested these areas might be. Bill's suggesting that over by the landfill, there's not a problem over there. Maybe we would restrict it over into that one area of perhaps. So I would like to have that so the council can work with it. The second thing I would recommend to the council is that we review this, and let's just consider that we're going to go, because there's no need to take it one at a time. We can do them both at the same time. Consider the text amendment option, and if we accept that, how do we integrate these recommendations? Because I guarantee you the recommendation from Mrs. Kenny is no different than every recommendation of the people who have stood up here over the last 2 years in public hearings, in public comments. How are we going to incorporate this, to what degree, in order to create what I guess you're talking about are the special exceptions, correct?
Well, I think what Ms. Hurley had stated, that if both of the lawyers would be able to take whatever that you have and be able to provide that. Am I correct, Paul? I'm not
Yeah.
trying to put you back out there again.
I would say maybe one approach would be we say take Mrs. Kenny's ideas
Right.
and produce, say, a big piece of text amendment that has a lot in it, and then you can pare it down from there.
Sounds reasonable.
Start big, and then you can eliminate.
Okay.
Mr. Cannon, if I could,
Yes.
zoning also includes enforcement. So I'm not trying to make your job harder to identify what this product is, but if one compound changes, then it's a different product.
Right.
What if a product comes out and smells like roses? If there's legislation created that eliminates something with a generic or general definition, that may be disallowed. That's the problem that's inherent with what's before the council now, to decide how you identify a product that is basically unidentifiable.
But isn't it
Specifically,
addressed-
we have attempted or proposed a definition that it's a liquid organic fertilizer.
Correct.
You can't get any more specific than that I'm aware of. It doesn't have a product name. It doesn't have, it's not a named fertilizer. It is generically a soil amendment. I think the council will struggle to identify what this product is. And again, if one thing changes, that has an impact on how I would be able to enforce, what is or is not ultimately adopted.
But don't you address that with the fact you said, like, you defined it, and you also talked about the size of the tank, too? So those two things combined, aren't you sort of, in general, addressing what your issue there for enforcement to some degree?
If something different than what the council tries to ban ultimately, adopt something that restricts its storage in the county, if one thing is different in that material that's in the tank, it's not what has been banned. I think that's where the struggle may
challenge.
lie.
But I don't think, I don't
That's the
hear
challenge.
us talking about,
Well, you did tell us,
banning.
we could do anything we wanted. You said we were the county council body.
He just
And
said that he
All
didn't
the
know.
special exceptions.
If one product, ever how that is ultimately identified, is banned, if it's a different product,
I think we'll start with what we have before us, and we're certainly going to have more work sessions. We'll have a work session in our next meeting, and then we would look to you all to give us guidance as to whether or not we crossed the line or not, and practical purposes, in the execution of your job, right?
The whole goal, I would
The
hope.
Planning Commission has forwarded their
Yes.
recommendation, and it is certainly, the ball has been handed off to council.
Correct. And
I think
whatever.
the planning and zoning commission knew that this was just a starting point. I mean, they didn't set it in, well, we couldn't set it in stone for one thing. But, when you talk about putting it in an industrial zone, one of the suggestions here is tanks or lagoons must be constructed on the property where the DAF waste will be applied. So if we go to A1 or A2, you can automatically mark that one out because we're not going to apply it in the industrial zone because there's no farm there.
And I get that.
You see what I'm saying? So there's so many things here that, that's great ideas. I think it's a good idea to put it on the property where it's going to be applied. That eliminates truck traffic,
I get you, and plus I've had farmers who've said to me, if I want to put a DEF tank up, even a limited one, you tell me I have to buy land in the industrial area, I can't put it on my own farm, and I'm concerned about that too. I get it.
A lot more thought.
Most definitely.
As Andy said, that's why you might have different restrictions. If we did a blend, if we did a hybrid of both, you'd have different, the restrictions might be different. That might not be a restriction in the I2.
But what Joe just said eliminates a lot of those issues. If the farmer that's using it has to have it on his property, and there's only a handful of people using it, nobody's built a $3 million gallon tank.
That appears to be one of the main issues right now.
Solve a lot of problems.
Any other discussion? Questions, comments? Yeah.
No, you just,
Discussion.
you want us to get you the maps, am I correct? And I'll get those to
I
Ms.
have-
Hurley.
I
You already have maps, correct?
Yeah, Keith, I got them all.
He's got all the
I should've
maps.
brought Keith printed all of them.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got
So he has the maps.
Okay.
and they're all,
Something we can, well, not paper maps, I mean PDFs where you can zoom in.
yeah, I don't have them in PDF.
PDF, well, yeah, they're a little bit smaller though, but we can provide those.
So that when you zoom in, it's clear.
That's fine.
You can see what
Yeah.
you're doing. Okay, that'd be great, thank you.
We'll sketch up thoughts and send them to,
Law?
Well, no, I mean, I think you're gonna have to come in here in 2 weeks or the next council meeting with some recommendations based on what the information we have tonight. We've gotten input from the public, we've gotten input from the Planning and Zoning Department and the commission, so 2 weeks, we need to move further ahead here and do some substantive
Mr. President,
conclusions.
last thing, I just want to say a recognition and a thank you publicly, of course, recognizing Holly Porter, Delmarva Chicken Association, for being here. She also helped set up the tour that that many of us couples went on, and so I did appreciate that.
Thank you very much. We good? All right, thank you.
Mr. President, thank you for staying so late with us.
Next item on the agenda is the discussion of the Shintel cable franchise agreement. Mr. Wilbur, I think this is in
So
your
we're still here.
territory as well.
Computer's going to sleep. We did that so long.
Yeah. Knew that wasn't gonna be short.
My whole start over.
You can sit at the table.
We're gonna make this up close and personal.
Can we take 5?
You may.
Do other councils treat you that way?
Which way, sir?
Make you go to the podium instead?
Some
Really?
at the podium, yes. I like to move around after sitting for a long time.
Yeah, well, so do I.
So we'll certainly move through this as quick as we can.
It's getting late.
So I want to start off by,
Yeah, you want to introduce yourself first? Yeah.
my name is Kirk Costco. I work with Shentel Communications. I'm with their Industry and Regulatory Affairs Department. Brian Bird, who was supposed to be here this evening, could not make it, so I'm here in his place. I work on the same team, and we've been working with Attorney Welbear for quite a while on this subject. So I'm well versed in it. So I have a short presentation, that we'd like to do to kind of introduce you to Shentel, and kind of the reason that we're here tonight, that I'm here, representing Shintel is that we would like to pursue a cable franchise agreement in the county. So, but we appreciate the county council allowing us to be here this evening. So, thank you, and I'll turn it to Attorney Wilbur.
So Shentel, as you can see, that's Shenandoah Cable Television LLC, approached the acting county executive about bringing a fiber optic cable, you might call it, operation into Wicomico County. And so we drafted up a franchise agreement, which I think you have in your briefing books, which is very similar to what we have with Comcast and MediaCom. It provides for the 5% franchise fee, just like we receive from Comcast. It provides for a PEG channel and a contribution, I think it's $3,000 a year for that PEG channel. It's just, it's very similar to what Comcast has. And I think Mr. Costco will explain why Shintel is somewhat different than Comcast and what it can bring to not only residential customers, but also commercial.
So is this in addition to Comcast, or is this replacing
Yes.
Comcast?
FCC regulations allow multiple providers, competition.
Which we're seeing more of that with broadband.
Right. So the construction of this fiber optic system would be entirely on Shentel's nickel. No monetary contribution from the county.
One quick question, Mr. Wilbur. We've mirrored the agreement, very similar to the Comcast,
Right.
which makes sense to model it after that. But
It
at the
went
same
on.
time,
I got you one.
it's an opportunity. I mean, the Comcast agreement's not necessarily perfect. We're kind of mirroring that image. And, sorry, Kurt, you're sitting here as I'm asking that question, but, the franchise fee, or,
The franchise fee is the maximum that we can collect.
Yeah, okay.
It's medium, MediaCom, Comcast, Shentel, it's all
That was my
5%.
next question, how much of this is
It's
pretty much
5%.
dictate to us regulatory wise that, we're.
Yeah, FCC has a lot of control here.
Right.
Yeah.
So the 5% is dictated to us by the FCC.
Yeah.
Does the revenue and stream, because I just want to make sure with all the jargon, does the revenue stream include any cost that you may charge for internet access?
No, the revenue stream from the franchise fee is strictly based on the cable TV products. That's how the franchise is structured. So it's only on cable TV.
Why wouldn't, Mr. Wilbur, why wouldn't we also include any revenue stream from internet access?
Can we?
I'm just looking at this.
Technically, in a cable franchise, no. I mean, at least under my understanding. And basically, is Shintel coming into the market as a new provider who's willing to come in and spend millions of dollars to come in and build a fiber to the home network, to basically ask us to collect a fee for broadband, and not the other providers, would not be fair. So, we basically, the reason the cable franchise agreement structured the way it is because it basically sets a pretty level playing field for all the players. And so that's why, right now we'd be looking at just at a cable TV franchise agreement. If the law would change, if the FC would change the regulations, then basically you can come back to each of the providers and ask them to contribute.
You're saying that the FCC does not allow the county to collect a fee for internet access charges?
I won't say that, but I can say that there isn't any agreement that we currently have that has that in it.
No, I think that was really probably the greatest downfall of that, the agreement we agreed to the last time it came to our desk as, here's what it is, it's been, months in negotiation, you guys got to get it on your table, and you got to get it off your table, and the council wasn't left with much of a negotiating option at the time, and I always wish that we had pursued that further.
But in the meantime, DP&L wants to sell electric out of our parking lot and not give us anything for that. You know, so,
There's two spaces. That's one of-
same thing, you know.
Jeez.
So, what are our options if we were to even want to go down that route?
Let's explore it. Let's look. You know, if it's permissible, because all these franchise agreements have been built on gross revenues from cable.
And I think we made a huge
Services.
mistake when we made our last agreement with Comcast.
So we will look at that.
Okay.
Which, Mayor, I guess that's the question, right, is how much we can actually regulate or what the FCC allows us to do so. I guess what you're getting at is, I mean, the bigger thing, everyone's dumping cable and internet is becoming the bigger thing. Streaming services are big, but currently we may not have the authority. Is that question, that may be the question here.
I think it's something you would have to look at.
I think then what you might be saying is that we can't necessarily legally demand one of one agency and not of another.
Maybe where we are.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
you know, oh, well, you know, you didn't do it with Comcast, we want to nail you with it. Maybe with precedent's been set.
To put it bluntly, yes, sir. That would be.
Right. Your point is, you're not gonna spend millions of dollars if you're gonna get
But sooner or later, I think we need
hammered
to
on
turn this
internet
thing
fees,
around.
and nobody
where-
else is.
Where
Right, and it's going to, you know, basically what it's going to do is add a charge that we're going to have to pass through to the additional charge, which is going to put us at a competitive disadvantage with either Comcast or Mediacom
They don't have.
because they don't have it.
So I guess in your dealings, prior dealings, Mr. Wilbur, I would hope that you were looking at how other counties address these type of agreements. Are there other counties that do receive revenue from?
Of the ones we've looked at, this is the type of agreement that we've seen.
Are there other counties in the United States that do receive revenue streams from internet access?
We can look more deeply at that. Okay.
And the issue with not charging Comcast right now, we have a contract with them, but when their contract's up, we can certainly charge them for that revenue stream.
And they may come back and say, well, you're not charging Shintel, so how
Right,
can you
and that's
charge
why at
us?
some point you gotta
So-
put that in the contract.
Not a conversation you want to have at 9:50.
Oh, I know he doesn't.
Yeah. But I
sure
would
we
like to
can solve it.
introduce, you know, let's hear what Shentel would do.
Yes, so I'll start with company overview. So our product name is Glow Fiber, and Shentel's been around for a long time, 120-year-old company. A couple of things that we pride ourselves on is building advanced networks. We build fiber to the homes. That's fiber from basically our pop site all the way into the customer's home, whether it's business or residential. We have excellent customer service support, and we like to be part of the local community as far as invest in and also partner with the local communities. That's part of what I do. So it's a relatively small company, 860 employees, about $241 million in annual revenues. We're a profitable company. We're not here today asking for any money from the county to build this network. Currently, we have about 93,000 homes that have fiber to the home, and that's expanding literally every week at this point. Moving on to the next page, Shentel's about 7,000 miles of fiber, and that continues to grow as well. You can see that we've recently been, I do a lot of work in Pennsylvania, so we've been up through the Carlisle, we have a franchise agreement, Carlisle, York, a number of franchise agreements in York County as well as Lancaster County. We recently have a franchise agreement signed with the city of Salisbury as well. So, so part of the expansion we're looking at here is because of that agreement we have signed with Salisbury. It allows us to continue to grow in this market. And you can see that Shentel's based a lot in Virginia is where they started, up the 81 corridor. The purple little dots, I'm not sure you can tell, and probably a black and white copy.
It is.
But there's some existing Glow markets along 81, and the newer markets that we have, we also have a signed franchise agreement with the city of Frederick, Maryland, and we're currently building the network there. So we continue to build kind of in this direction, and we're also talking to some communities in Delaware right now as well. So when you go to the next page, kind of what is it? Like I said, it's a 100% fiber network. We offer triple play services, internet, video, and phone, ultra high-speed bandwidth. And we also offer symmetrical bandwidth. This is an advantage that we offer. So especially through the whole COVID experience with the number of people working from home, studying from home, doing telemedicine from home, put a lot of strain on a lot of networks out there for broadband. So what makes fiber to the home somewhat unique is that we can offer symmetrical speeds, both download and upload. So currently right now, if you are a Comcast customer, I'm a Comcast customer at home, I subscribe to 300 megs. I get 300 megs download speed from the network to my home. When I go to upload, it's more like 10 to 15, and that's pretty typical. So with our speeds, if you took the 300 meg package, you would get 300 in both directions. And so that allows you to do study from home, work from home, telemedicine from home. There's a lot of advantages to that. Conference calls. If you do a lot of conference calls from home and you find yourself dropping or breaking up, this resolves that issue. We do up to 1 gigahertz speed. So that's one of the distinct advantages that we offer right now. It's a passive network, meaning that we have no active devices between our POP and the customer's home. Currently in a cable environment now, you would have amplifiers on the pole that are powered by power supplies. If you have a power outage, that equipment's designed to last for a couple of hours, and then it has to be run by generators. But with a passive network, the reliability is much better. So we don't have the active devices out there that can fail. Benefits, on to the next page, benefits. So we're talking about a significant capital investment in the market. Another competitive offering for internet, television, and phone. So someone who's been in the business a long time like myself and talked to a number of customers, one of the things that they always tell me is that I wish I had a choice of providers. So currently in a lot of cases, there's one provider, they're the incumbent, but what we're talking about is bringing in a second provider, creating competition, which is very helpful for pricing, customer service. There's a lot of benefits to having competition. And positive economic development impact. So we have very good business products as well. So we do a lot of work right now with hospitals, education, private enterprise, telecommuting. Those are all things that a fiber to the home network can bring.
You say hospitals like any, you talk about systems, systematically, or?
We do a lot of connection for hospitals, hospitals to doctor's offices. We do doctor, like groups. Where I'm at, it's Geisinger or UPMC. We do a lot of connections between those offices, and then we'll also provide a connection back to the hospital, so they can do a lot of telemedicine even between, the offices or the hospital. Banks, we do a lot of work with banks, connecting a number of bank branches for them. So we have a very good business in the business line of products as well. So the next slide, timeline. So the first step, is municipal engagement. It usually takes 60 to 90 days for us to work with a municipality or county and get a franchise agreement approved. Then we start a utility engagement where we actually start working with the local utility companies. So we have to go out and permit all the poles that we want to attach to. We work with the county or a municipality, whether it's a township, city, borough, with their permitting group, because if we're going to put a lot of underground in, we have to get permits. So everything has to be permitted through the municipality. There's a lot of engineering, construction, a lot of engineering before the construction actually starts. It takes about 12 to 18 months once the franchise is signed to actually start the construction phase.
So are you able to use all the existing utility easements, or do you have to purchase, the use of those easements?
That's a good question. And so
I know that.
So the cable franchise agreement is actually, in a sense, us purchasing the public right-of-way use from the county. So And that's really what the agreement is based on. And if there's any private easements, if you have apartment complexes, we would then approach the apartment complex owners, and we would have to get a separate easement to basically provide service there.
Good Lord.
Other things involved, local jobs. So, with the, basically between the city of Salisbury and the surrounding area, we're going to be hiring folks here for both installation, service. There'll be some type of a store in this location, a cable store, probably somewhere in this general vicinity of the city of Salisbury. But that would be also would take care of the county residents as well.
How does it work if you're going down a road and you're hooking up customers and you come to one that's got a 700-foot driveway or a 300-foot driveway? Do they pay from the road in, or?
There's language in the agreement, basically the same that Comcast or Mediacom has, that we would provide service. A standard installation is 150 feet. Anything more than that, we would work with the customer as far as any additional construction cost. And that's pretty standard language in any of the agreements that you'll see.
Overlap any of Comcast's areas, or?
We will be building a lot in a lot of the Comcast areas. So there's, we'll be directly competing with Comcast and directly competing with Mediacom.
As it is now, they don't compete, because they're
I don't know
not in
that-
Wicomico County much anyway. Mediacom's in the eastern part of the county, and, so.
Although I think you're going to see that start to change quite a bit. So I know in other areas, Comcast is directly competing with Mediacom. So,
Where do you see your service areas being established?
So right now, of course, we have the city of Salisbury, and then the initial service area we're looking at is about 6,200 residents, and it's kind of completely surrounding the city of Salisbury. On pretty much every side we're looking to build. And then there's another 4,000 homes we're evaluating right now, 2,000 to 4,000, to see, if we can build those next.
So that is competing with Comcast, correct?
Correct.
Why do you choose to compete with Comcast rather than to come in and hit areas that are that have no access whatsoever?
Probably for the same reason that Comcast or another provider, I don't want to single out Comcast, but whoever the incumbent provider is, probably for the very same reason that it's very, very expensive to go and build those type of areas. And that's why the federal government is stepping in right now and providing pretty much $100 million to every state to go out and get access to those areas.
Right, which is what we're trying to do here. Sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
and there's also state programs, where states are providing funding to do that.
I don't see any problem with competing with what we have. It's competition's always great for the
Are you guys in the business of doing that, competing with for like the broadband that the federal government's put that money out for?
Yes, we are looking at, we've done grants. We were just awarded a grant in Frederick County. So there's some that we applied to in Maryland where we've already established. Pennsylvania is just starting their program. I know you guys don't care about Pennsylvania, but I'm very involved in their rural broadband program there. And they're just getting it really put together. Maryland is much further ahead. And our home base is Virginia, and Virginia is much further ahead too. So they've been doing this for several years. They've identified the problem quite a few years ago and said we need to do something about it. And I think probably with the federal government now stepping in with all this money is really going to help, as long as it goes, where it's intended. So.
One quick question I have, more out of curiosity, but you're servicing, when John has a problem, is you're servicing an in-house product, those 800 and some employees, or do you outsource that when there's issues?
Yes. So most of the construction is used by outsourcing. We have our own construction, but when a project this size, we can talk about the initial construction, it's mostly outsourced. But we manage it very closely. One of the next things we do after we have a franchise agreement in place is we have a schedule a meeting, we talk with the local permitting and engineering group, and we kind of outline exactly how we do it, the notification process to the customers, you know, the training that we put our contractors through, because we know how disruptive construction can be. And so we've got a really good program in place to handle a lot of that.
But I'm actually asking more once John's become a customer now. So he's a customer, but his cable's down now. His triple play's not working. So when he calls to get that addressed, do you do that servicing to customers in-house, or is that outsourced?
Typically, service and maintenance is in-house, and a lot of times the installation will be outsourced. And there's a number of reasons for that too. When you build a network and you have, when you basically open it up to customers, you could end up with several thousand installs. And if you tried to do that with just your in-house staff, it would take a long time. So usually there's an influx of installation contractors to come and help us with the initial build and the initial burst, so to speak. And then we would have, we would be hiring staff here to handle installation, service, and maintenance.
I'm just asking that question because customer service is probably the, yeah, like I said, you already see, right. People start, everybody's had to deal with that at some point. Yeah, that's like some of your worst days of your life is having to deal with, yeah.
I've heard from many constituents, not just this one provider, but the next provider in different parts of the county. I've been dealing with this for 8 years, and I'm not sure that a new provider is really going to help the constituent out. But what can you do to compete and bring down that outrageous price that the constituents are being charged? Sorry about that.
Cops are coming.
It's a wake-up call.
Maybe woke up.
Did you understand my question?
Yes, sir. So what happens with competition, no matter what industry it is, it has a huge impact on pricing, and it also has a huge impact on customer service. You now have the choice to stay with your existing provider or leave them. We can't come in and spend millions of dollars and have our prices so far out of reach that nobody's going to switch providers. So our pricing has to be very competitive with Comcast or whoever is here, Mediacom.
I get that, but you know, as someone that gets these phone calls, I was hoping to hear that you were going to offer a substantial decrease in what they're already paying.
Well, in some cases, there's programs out there now, the ACP program that the federal government is providing. We're a participating member of that. Mm-hmm. That's a subsidized internet product where it's $30 a month, as long as you meet the criteria for that. So, but pretty much all the major providers are doing that as well. So there's ways that, you know, basically the pricing is being addressed. Some of it, I could spend all night telling you about programming and why it's so expensive and, you know, why it gets passed down to the consumer. You know, when a ball player gets a $200 million contract, that trickles all the way down to the people either buying the tickets or watching the games on TV. They certainly don't eat those costs. And programming, video programming today is just incredibly expensive for everyone. So,
how did you come to the conclusion of a $3,000 contribution to the public access channel? Where did that number come from? 3,000, 5,000, 2,000?
Comcast, it's the same number.
Based on per capita of the service area, or is it just a flat fee?
It's what Comcast is paying.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, there's also a per subscriber fee in there for the PEG monthly, the same that Comcast has in their agreement. I think it's 80 cents.
Yep.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
I guess it's been a year and a half or so. We've heard from a lot of providers, and I'm actually very excited about what I'm seeing here and something new and competitive. But this is the first time we've seen a contract Well, what's the difference?
The first time you've seen a contract?
Yeah, we've listened to providers, they come forth, but nobody's offered a contract, but now we've got a contract.
Well,
We see.
we've dealt with broadband, but this is more of a franchise for a cable system based on fiber optic.
And internet also.
And, you know, it's a triple play if you wish to choose that.
Do you have the phone voice over,
Yes, we have voice over IP.
which there still are people using that?
There's a surprising number of people that take that. The price is very attractive for unlimited local and long-distance calling. It's priced very well, and there's some pricing at the end of this, the last slide here. And I can also provide additional pricing if you have any questions. So the nice thing about this is the $20 for the phone, there's no additional equipment, so you don't have equipment rental charge on top of that. You just plug it into the fiber device that's coming into the home. And so there's an advantage there.
Looking for, Mr. Wilbur, are you looking for a consensus or?
Right.
What-
I think where we are is you have a couple more questions, and I think we need to get answers for those questions back to the council. But yes, ultimately, we're looking for a council consensus to proceed to a resolution to adopt a franchise agreement.
We'll have a follow-up. What's your time frame? What do you need? Minimum 2
And I should have an answer for the next meeting if you would like.
So we could try to see if we would put it in the next meeting. Depends on, I'm not quite sure of what workload we have coming in front of us, but we'll certainly look at taking that into consideration.
Sure, next meeting or two.
Okay.
You know, Shentel, I think, wants to move forward as quickly as they can.
I'm sure.
So are you going to be able to provide broadband to a lot of the areas out in the county that don't have service now?
So
I think it said 93,000 homes possibly in
Well,
here.
that's
but-
company-wide what we have.
Okay.
Here initially, we're looking at 6,200 homes
For the county.
for the county, and probably another 2,000 to 4,000 we're evaluating right now. So
Okay.
it could be 10,000. And then once we're here, you know, and start, you know, to bring some money in to recoup our investment, then we'll be looking to expand, and that's what we've done in other areas as well. So there's different classifications. There's unserved, where people have no internet service whatsoever.
I've got some of those in my district.
And then there's underserved, where they only have a speed that's probably a DSL, you know, or lower. Those are the two things that are currently being addressed by a lot of this public funding that's coming down right now from either state level or federal level.
We have to wrap things up here if we could. We'll look forward to what you bring back to us, and thank you very much for staying so.
Thank you for having us, so we appreciate it.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Listen to all the questions.
Can arms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to dropping Comcast. Yeah.
Yeah. Next
lot of
item on the
people do.
agenda is the wireless
Safe out there.
telecommunications facility lease with Wireless Edge, at the airport. Chris, sorry it takes so long.
That's okay, I'm happy to do this. This is a project I've been working on quite some time. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Chris Davidson, Assistant Airport Manager at the airport. If I'm not out here in 3 minutes, then I'm doing my job poorly. Okay, what you've got in front of you is a lease agreement for a cell tower to be placed upon the airport. A little over a year ago, we released an RFP to find providers to provide the greatest return on investment, or excuse me, the greatest return for the land rent that we could get. Chris's personal opinion, I don't care if we make a dime, we need cell service out there. Maryland State Police, all of the entities out in that area just don't have good cell service. So the fact that we're able to lease this and make money off the land is a big win for the county.
Good for you, Chris.
I
You work
agree
on the
with
rest
you
of the
on
county to do
service.
this?
I agree with you on the service. I travel up and down Mount Herman Road a lot, and I
Yes, sir.
always count on losing it when I reach
Yeah,
Walton Switch Road. So,
very excited to get this done and bring this to the community. It's a big win for everybody.
Any further questions? What do we, Mrs. Tully?
Yeah, so it does require a public hearing, and we have to advertise for 3 weeks, so we're looking at August the 2nd.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Good job.
Y'all have a great evening. Thank you.
Yep, good job.
See, that's how it's done. Give out property, you get paid for it.
There you go.
EB&L didn't want to pay, these folks do.
I agree with you.
You've been dragging that dead horse.
He's not going to let it go. He's not going to let it go.
Good.
Mr. Wilbur.
All right, I will give you,
Chris
Andrew-
did it in 2 minutes. Chris did it in under 3 minutes.
It will be. So, as you know, Andrew's been working this police accountability subject, but I've got a little summary here. As you know, the legislation was effective June 28th, and then Comar State Reg required advertisement for 30 days. That'll finish on 7/28. So I think we've got 33 applicants for these positions, and we may get some more before it closes on 7/28. They'll be vetted, and the council and the acting county executive will have to caucus and choose ultimately and confirm the Police Accountability Board. That's the big thing, because the other boards are largely populated from the Police Accountability Board. So the 9 people that are put on that are important choices. As of July 1, if citizens have complaints about any law enforcement agency in the county, they can file a complaint form, which the county executive, the exacting county executive and Andrew have worked up not only the application, and that's been put out, and the applications have come in. There's also online a complaint form, which anyone can fill out, and it will be run through the process that's been created. And that's an update on where we are. So the next step will be to populate the Police Accountability Board.
So just to be clear, we've still got, the public still has till the 28th to put in?
Till 7/28 to put in an application. There's been a good response.
That's great.
To it. Yes.
I think we got one tonight or this afternoon. I saw an email.
Any other questions? Nope. Seeing none. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilbur.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Wilbur.
You're welcome.